Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I know it's early, and that's not always a favorite in potentially this crowd. So what I would love to do is start off with actually figuring out who you guys are and who's in the room today. So I guess first question is, who is actively working on, I almost made VR and working the same word. Who's working today, working in VR actively today? Awesome, sounds like a lot of you in this room. And then who's working on Unity? Yes. Developers? How many of you guys are actually developers? And now, how many of you are advertisers, which you could also be developers if you're helping to acquire users into your apps? We're trying to figure that out. Okay, not a single advertiser. That is interesting. All right, awesome. And lastly, business folks. Generic business, awesome. Yes, high and proud. Fantastic. So thank you again so much for being here. Obviously, it seems like a bunch of you are already working in Unity. We're gold sponsored this event. So what I thought is, instead of telling you what we're up to in VR, I would show you, if we could hit the video. One more time. I always find it hilarious when there are technical issues at like a VR conference because we're talking about the future, but we can't get a video to play on a PowerPoint, but that's okay. Watching that does not get old for me. So at its core, which a lot of you already know, Unity is a 3D content creation engine. And about 2/3 of all VR content is actually built on Unity. But Unity is also actually a massive advertising platform, and we reach about 850 million users every month across our mobile platform. And that's actually why I'm here. I've spent my whole career in advertising, in interactive content, specifically gaming, and worked at a gaming publisher, worked at a gaming developer, Zynga, where I also ran an interactive content studio to try to create advertising that's more native to the platform. And the reason why I've always found that to be extremely fulfilling and why I'm so passionate about it is because I get to bring money in and help fund some of the amazing projects that you guys in this room are all working on and building. And when it comes to something like VR, though, how you do that sort of becomes really the question. How can you do that effectively? So we at Unity approach this like this. You have to know the past to understand the present. VR is definitely new. We're all trying to figure it out. There are no standards. I'm sure we're all feeling the emotional roller coaster every time a new article comes out. But the good news is that while VR is super new, advertising isn't. Advertising has been around for a while. And we can actually learn a lot from advertising when new platforms came out that were just as cool and innovative in their time, and then sort of apply that to VR. So with that, a brief history of advertising. We started off at the beginning of time with billboards and newspaper ads. Very simple, static images, a couple lines of copy about the product. And then, interestingly, when radio came on the scene, even though it was a much more immersive platform, our first instinct was to just use what worked before. So radio hosts would basically recite newspaper ads or billboard ads and kind of talk about the product. It wasn't until a little bit later that we got into using the power of sound, so using jingles, using voice actors, creating stories for the advertiser, for the product, inside of this medium. And when TV came out, you'd think every advertiser's dream, sight, sound, motion. But again, we really weren't taking advantage of it at the beginning. You had TV show hosts, or fake ones in this scenario, that were essentially reciting radio commercials on a TV. And then over time, we got to the 30-second ad format that we all know and love today, which in a lot of ways is like a mini movie or a mini story within the main content that you're watching. Next came the internet. We literally called them billboards and slapped them on websites. And then, of course, over time, now we have native ad formats in social, in stream, and all that. Mobile, same thing. The screenshot looks very similar to the previous one. And now we have things like vertical video. So today when we look at VR advertising, the little that's being done in it right now is really 360 video. So what's already working on mobile? Again, taking that and putting it into the future. But we at Unity wanted to say, well, where is that evolution going, just like it always has? What really will work in VR? And we believe the answer to that is called the virtual room. So the virtual room is an interactive advertising bureau, or IAB, which sort of guides all the standards across the advertising industry. It's an innovation standard, so they've kind of earmarked this as something that will happen in VR. And the virtual room consists of three things. First is an environment, which can be a 360 video or a 360 image. But the key here is that it's branded for the advertiser. So if this were a coffee brand, it's a coffee shop. Next, you have objects inside of your scene or your environment, and they kind of tell the brand story. So maybe this is a coffee shop that you get your coffee on the go, sort of on your way to work or on your way to something. And so you have a cell phone, kind of saying you're on the go. And lastly, what we do is we define interactions with those objects. So if you look at the coffee cup, gaze at it, pick it up, whatever the case may be, you may see all the flavors the coffee shop offers. You do the same thing with the TV. You might see just a classic kind of TV commercial, that sort of thing. Essentially, the goal of the virtual room is to create what is sort of a branded app or branded experience, but surface it like an ad. What do we mean by surface it like an ad? Well, it starts off with it being part of existing content. So you're in a VR app you're already downloaded, you're in the experience, and you get to a moment where you can enter into something else in order to get more content and unlock more inside of your core app. And then you have this kind of Alice in Wonderland down the rabbit hole moment where now you're in this fully immersive brand experience. For the first maybe 15 to 20 seconds, you get kind of a canned story to make sure you know that this coffee shop is on the go on your way to work. And then you can sort of explore for a while. And about 30 to 60 seconds later, you leave. And you go back to your core experience, and now you've unlocked this content. And we believe that this is going to work for basically a couple of reasons. The first one is that advertising always drives content. So just like in the paid for, these people pay a lot of money for their Super Bowl tickets. Halftime show, you have Pepsi sponsoring it. They get a ton of 30-second ad spots during the broadcast, of course. Then you look at your favorite TV shows and cars sponsoring them. Even something like paid movies and paid Happy Meals come together to promote each other and to drive the other person's product. And the main reason for this is really that consumers will never want to pay for the cost of 100% of the entertainment that they consume. It needs to be subsidized in some way, and advertising is the most popular way to do that. The second reason is that consumers will choose ads. So according to our research, and there's a ton out there in the industry, almost 80% of consumers want ads in exchange for more content. Or more simply put, they click for free stuff. And this is, of course, especially important in something like VR, which is more immersive, it is more emotional in a lot of ways, and you have to give the user those options. Also in an atmosphere like VR, you don't have that much content out there yet. So these virtual rooms can actually be content in it of themselves, but also will, of course, help monetize and help bring revenue in to create even more. And now we get to pitfalls. So we are super excited about the possibility of advertising in VR, and of course, just like all entertainment, believe that it will be part of it. But of course, there will be pitfalls along the way. And the first one that I want to talk about is context. So context when it comes to advertising and entertainment is, of course, extremely important. No one wants to see toys, like a toy basically, in a bloody zombie shooter game. It doesn't fit, the context is wrong. But context is not the same thing as product placement. So we at Unity do not believe that the future of VR advertising is sort of these soda cans all over every single seat. And the main reason for that is because what the advertisers really want and what context really means is telling a story to the right audience. So you have your advertiser or your developer in a lot of ways if folks at your companies are doing user acquisition or on that side of the fence sort of. And they want to reach an audience. But they want to tell a story to that audience, to talk about what the product is and help explain it, or the game, or whatever it is. And having a billboard that's sort of floating off in space, or a soda can on a coffee table, doesn't help bring that brand to life, doesn't help bring that or create that story. And so if you don't believe me, you can follow the money. So in movies, TV, and gaming, only 6% of all advertising spend goes to product placement. Of those three mediums, television has been the most successful. 11% of TV advertising goes to product placement. But the top 10 TV shows last year had to integrate almost 30,000 products into their shows in order to make up that 11%. And so for everyone in this room who's concerned about how ads are going to mess up your core experience, which completely am sensitive to, it is going to be way worse if you just have thousands of products all over your VR scenes and you're making only a fraction of the revenue that you could through a more immersive and storytelling platform of advertising. And lastly, the second pitfall and the last pitfall is how we buy new content. So at its very core, the advertiser wants to reach a certain audience in a certain IP. A lot of times advertisers also have agencies that do that on their behalf. In kind of a new ecosystem, what sometimes happens though is people get really excited and a lot of folks try to enter into this world. And for example, in the early days of cable TV, when advertising started to become popular on cable, you had like the Comcasts and the DirecTVs of the world that were all sort of getting in on this. And then that advertiser had to buy basically that same TV show for 4 different times or a few different times from different platforms. And unfortunately, this platform bifurcation didn't work in TV, it didn't work in console, and it didn't work in mobile. And so we don't think it's going to work in VR. The way it should work, and the reason why the previous model doesn't work, is because content and data are always what the advertiser wants. And who owns the content and who has the data on those users? It's that IP holder. It's the person making the content. So that advertiser and their agency want to get straight to that IP. The only thing that really does help in this kind of ecosystem is when the IPs come together and help work together. So in the example of Viacom, for example, you can reach your same audience on MTV and on Comedy Central, all sort of through the same person. And that's a great way to help bring together more content. Love this quote. We spend a great deal of time studying history, which, let's face it, is mostly the history of stupidity. So we did just talk about pitfalls and what our predecessors did in different other kinds of ad formats and the things that potentially went wrong. And our goal here is obviously to not repeat those mistakes. Because at the end of the day, we're really trying to go towards the same world. And that world is this vision where VR and AR and MR all come together and sort of the line between what's real or virtual and reality no longer exists. But in order to get to this amazing world, we need to help power it and bring more monetization and advertising to it. And so with that, with your help, we believe that we can create that amazing ecosystem. And that ecosystem really starts with a lot of you guys in this room today, the content creators, and building the amazing stuff that is built on Unity and many other platforms today. By building more amazing content, more consumers will want to experience it. Their friends will be doing it, they'll want to see it, they'll want to check it out. They will buy more headsets and more devices, which in turn will help fund the platforms to create even better headsets, better technology, cheaper, faster, etc. And that will, of course, bring on more people. And as more people inevitably participate in this platform, advertisers get more interested, and they continue funneling money to you guys. So this is how we look at sort of healthy ecosystems that are live in the world today, and what we're hoping will happen with VR. And with that, I have 57 seconds for questions. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yes.
Is Unity launching a VR app?
We are basically working with other people in the industry that have them or don't have them, the IAB and all of that, and figuring out how we can help do that. Really what we are trying to do is help people build sort of a virtual room in Unity and then it to run in Unity apps to help our developers make money. So we're really interested on those two sides of the equation, and that middle ground, so the platform question that you asked, we're figuring out internally, but also working with a lot of folks who are in the industry today to try to help build that together. Anything else? Yes?
You find that the majority, you'll have to kind of change your kind of ads that you're you're showing to more brand-oriented PR rather than existing CPI campaigns, for example, that you're running?
I think yes, in terms of not being able to do CPI as easily, because of course there's an extra friction point. But in terms of who's interested in this, I definitely know across the various folks that are doing this in the space, it is both game developers that maybe even only have mobile apps but want to take advantage of the fact that someone's in a more immersive environment, as well as brands. So it's both at this point, and we've talked to both as well, so I'm hoping it will kind of go that way. It's just a matter of, if they're trying to do a very efficient campaign, maybe VR isn't where they should be.